Alright, what's up, what's up? Welcome to the Strat Chat. Everybody keeping it surreal. How you guys doing? We've got something special for you today. We've got a United in Stormwind set review, card reveal. If you haven't seen anything, the cards launch on, I believe, Tuesday. So we're looking at tomorrow. If you guys are from the future, yesterday, the day before, who knows? Hopefully you guys can come back here and get some ideas for some deck building. What's good, what's not, and what to look forward to. So we are going to start. We're going to start with some Demon Hunter. Alright, so first we've got the quest line for Demon Hunters. 1 cost, Final Showdown. Quest line, draw 4 cards in 1 turn. Reward, reduce the cost of the cards drawn by 1. Um, Pretty straightforward. Drawing 4 cards in a turn, not the easiest thing to do. Demon Hunter does draw cards well. You do draw the 1 card to start your turn, so really you just need to draw 3 extras, but yeah, 3 extras is not nothing. You might need to get a draw an outcast card that will count. Even the specific type of draws that you get, targeted draw from your deck, will still count. So you could go Spectral Sight with an outlook. You could go with Sigil Tracer and get the extra card. So you might be able to power this out. The problem is, if all of the cards that you're drawing say draw, then what are you really drawing for? The good news is the first step of this quest will make the second step cheaper. Alright, and the second step being gain momentum. Quest line, draw 5 cards in 1 turn. Reward, reduce the cost of the cards drawn by 1. Again, so same thing. This time you're probably going to need a draw 3 effect or multiple draw 2 effects. You're going to need in maybe too much time. It may be too much of a time commitment to get this, especially just for the second part of the quest, where again all you're doing is reducing the cost of the cards. And then final, you've got quest close the portal. You've got questline, draw 5 cards in 1 turn, and your reward is Demon Slayer Kurtrus. Now, Demon Slayer Kurtrus is a 5 cost 7/7 with Battle Cry for the rest of the game. Cards you draw cost 2 less. So, the issue I have with this questline is it's very difficult to pull off, and when you do pull it off, what have you actually done? You haven't actually gotten anything. You're just saying for the rest of the game my cards cost less. I have 1 slightly above average creature to play, a 5 cost 7/7. You're not really doing anything. But here's the catch with this. There's an existing 1 turn kill Demon Hunter deck. You might just want Final Showdown. Not because you want Demon Slayer Kurtrus, just because you want Final Showdown. That deck very naturally draws a lot of cards. It plays Skull of Gul'dan. Skull of Gul'dan by itself turns on gain momentum. So Skull is going to reduce all the cards that you drew by 3. Final Showdown would reduce it by a further 1, which means even your Il'gynoth will be less. Your second Skull potentially could be less. There's a lot of things that you could reduce by 4 in that case, or in the weird case where Skull of Gul'dan's not outcast, you can cast it and still have all the cards reduced by 1, which in that deck is enough to start getting turn 8 and turn 9 combos, as opposed to needing all the mana that you might get. Skull really turns that deck on, and this is like having a mini Skull of sorts. And you do have your double jumps, you do have your acrobatics, you have your other ways to turn it on. So I'm going to give this card 2 stars, not 1. It looks like 1, and honestly, if you're trying to get Demon Slayer Kurtrus, at the moment, there's nothing to do with this. 1 star, we'll go over the ratings in a second, but 1 star, it would have only the most niche playability, and even then, probably not that good, or not that important. Demon Slayer Kurtrus just doesn't do anything for us right now, and it certainly doesn't do anything better than an existing deck does right now. We would need to be looking all the way into 2022, the next year, before this potentially gets any better than anything else. But just Final Showdown, played in a deck that already exists, I do believe it makes that deck better. So I believe Final Showdown can go into such a deck, slightly improve it, and I think it's worth it. I think you just play it for Final Showdown. You don't build around it. You just say, this is going to happen naturally. I already wasn't doing anything on turn 1. This just lets me play through my deck a little bit better. And in a turn where I do draw 4 cards, I don't need to feel bad about reaching, because there's a chance that all the cards I draw become playable anyways. So these reach turns, like the Skull of Gul'dan turn in particular, you're still going to be able to play all your cards. So Final Showdown, I'm going to say, is much better than what everyone else is saying, because everyone else is saying this card is hot garbage. I think you play this card, you just don't try to complete the whole quest line. You just play it, and you just allow it to happen naturally, and I think it'll be as good as you want it to be in those situations. Chaos Leech, 3-cost Fell Spell. Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to a minion. Outcast, deal 5. Obviously, you're going to think of I-Beam. Main issue here is with Chaos Leech, when are you going to play it over I-Beam? Generally, costing 1 is a better upside than dealing 2 more damage. Reducing cost by 2 is just much better than adding 2, and you can just know that, extrapolate that based on half the sets in Hearthstone have a 1-cost deal 2 damage spell. So in reality, you're just definitely getting more from I-Beam. That said, it is a certain amount of redundancy in your deck if you're going to play control against minion heavy decks. It also might hit that break point where it's killing something that is otherwise tougher to kill. So Tent Trasher being an example. One of the ways that Warrior fights against Demon Hunter currently is they use their weapons to clear the board, and then they drop Tent Trasher without actually rushing it into anything, and say, come at me, deal with my 5/5. Well, suddenly now you can deal with their 5/5 very efficiently. So there could be a home for Chaos Leech, and as we'll discuss in a bit, Fel has some other support, and we'll look into it. Chaos Leech is getting 2 stars. In Limited, also 2 stars. It's not big enough to generally swing the board very effectively. Sometimes it's going to help you kill some big guys. You're happy to put it in your deck, but you're not reaching to pull this over other cards. All right, 8-cost, 7/5, payoff card, the legendary Battlecry. Cast all Fel spells you've played this game. Targets enemies if possible. That's very important, especially since you're looking for this to be a one-sided board wipe. You're looking to crush their side of the board. This card's great. If you're playing this sort of control or mid-range Demon Hunter deck, which this set seems to be supporting, this is your payoff card. You're looking to draw into this. With all the cards that you're trying to draw from your quest, you're trying to hit this card. Notably, most of the cards in the OTK Demon Hunter deck are Fel. Your Fel spells tend to be your removal spells and your hero gaining attack power. So there's 2 ways that you could look to use Jace Darkweaver. This card could become a sort of one-shot half kill just with all the pump spells that you get access to, your Chaos Strikes, your Furies. These are sort of cards that you can use to create early board control, and then when you play Jace Darkweaver, you're going to get this huge payoff where you might hit your opponent for 12 damage. So that could be part of it. The other half of it would be all the removal spells, your Fel Scream, your I-Beam. You can use cards like this to create this massive board wipe, or board swipe, I should say. Importantly, Battlecry triggers as you're playing it from your hand. So I don't believe deal 4 damage to all creatures is going to hit this. I also don't think that you're going to get any benefits like Outcast, but that's okay. These cards historically don't work that way. But 8 for a 7/5 with a completely one-sided effect that might be game-changing and does have room for future growth makes this card a huge bomb. You're looking to play it in a lot of different strategies. I think it's going to create new strategies. This card gets a solid 3 stars. In Arena, however, you're getting a 1 star out of this. This is an 8-cost 7/5. You hope not to get it in your legendary pool. There's probably 1 Fel spell in your deck, maybe 2. You're lucky to draw the 1 that you have. So do not pick this in Arena, but this is a build-around card in Standard. Card number 3, Irebound Brute, 7-cost, Demon, 6/7, Taunt. Costs 1 less for each card you've drawn this turn. So this card effectively actually costs 6. You're always drawing your card for the turn. It is a taunt creature that is a demon that might go in your big demon deck. It might just be a card that is supported in your control deck, because that deck often didn't want to run something like Skull of Gul'dan, because when you have 7s, 8s, and 9s in your deck, you can't really maneuver the skull to the side of your hand to get the outcast effect. So unless it's in your opening hand on the left and you can reliably get it cast off, you're not going to get it. This gives you a mid-range thing or something to do on turn 6 or maybe earlier, um, where you can just drop this guy and feel good about it. It's not a huge body. It's a 6/7 taunt, but that should be enough to be a 3-for-1 against aggro decks, or at least a 2-for-1. And it's not a body that you'd be unhappy to see from your pit commander. So your pit commander can bring this into play. You're not unhappy to see a 6/7 taunt. In fact, there's a lot of situations where you'd rather see a 6/7 taunt than an 8/8 that hits your opponent twice. So while Illidari Inquisitor ends games quickly, if you're looking to build a control deck that is finding ways to just put massive threats on the table, this might replace Illidari Inquisitor in a control style deck. So I think this card has a lot of promise. I think it's a very strong card. You can do things like Spectral Sight on curve on turn 6, fill your hand while also playing this. If you've reduced the cost of cards with your quest early in the game, you can potentially have this either be cheaper, or your draw spells could be cheaper to the point where you hit these breakpoints where Irebound Brute actually comes out much earlier. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, and I didn't mention it before on the quest line, but Soul Fragments. Soul Fragments count as draw. You draw it, you draw a replacement. It should work this way. If your deck is full of Soul Fragments, then you might have these payoff turns where you cast something like Acrobatics or Spectral Sight, a draw 2 spell, and suddenly it might draw you 3 cards instead of 2, or 4 cards instead of 2, and that completely changes everything about a card like Irebound Brute, because suddenly you might actually be able to ramp into it, and it might sit in your hand. You might look at it and say, well, I can play this card draw spell on turn 5, and it has this upside of potentially letting me also play Irebound Brute on this turn. And certainly once you're on turn 6, you can cast Spectral Sight with Outcast, and you know you're going to draw a new card, and then you get to play this for cheaper. Same thing with Sigil Tracer. So Irebound Brute is a very strong card. I think it is not defining of the deck, but it fits into the deck, which is why we're giving it 2 stars. In Arena, it's just a great body. It gets 3 stars. All right, our next card is Sigil of Alacrity, a 1-cost shadow spell, not fel, very importantly. And I wonder if during playtest they realized that if this were a fel card, it would be too good. So the fact that this is shadow when there aren't other shadow cards in Demon Hunter sort of rings a bell in my head that they may have thought that this was too good. Or that the archetype was too good. So that definitely leads me to want to build this deck, and I'm going to suggest that you should. I'm going to put a link to a deck, a Demon Hunter control deck in the description below. Feel free to try it out. I hope it works for you. I think it's going to be very, very strong. This card is Felgorger, 4-cost 4/3 demon. Battle Cry, draw a fel spell, reduced its cost by 2. The body on this is garbage. You don't want to put 4-cost 4/3s in your deck. They die to 2-cost removal and to 2-cost creatures they trade down. So you really need to want this effect. Now, targeted draw is always something to look out for. It builds combos, it builds control, it can get you very specific cards, it gives your deck a lot of redundancy, it shrinks your deck. There's definitely a lot to like about this effect, which is why it's costed so poorly. Draw a fel spell, reduced its cost by 2. Now, we've already seen that most of the fel spells are removal, so essentially you're probably taking a removal spell from your deck and making it cost 1. So would you play a 5-cost 4/3 cast Eyebeam? I think so. It's at least on par. There's a lot of cards like that, 5-cost 3/4s that deal 4 damage to a minion. That card exists already. It's not good. It's not like great. It's average, and that's so the effect is costed properly, we'll say. But then it has the upside of being able to get you very specific spells, right? Draw a fell spell and reduce its cost by 2. You could get let's say I beam, and the removal is just the very generic things that you're looking at, but you could be building towards your combo. This card is a demon, so you could reduce the cost of this as a demon. Certainly playable as a 2-cost 4/3 for sure. Um, Raging Fell Screamer, would be below average then, but maybe you have a big payoff turn where you go Raging Fell Screamer into Fell Gorger into something else. So there could be. So the Fell Gorger could create some sort of redundancy, some sort of loop, maybe that makes your deck very dependable. And sometimes in these control decks, you might need that. You're like looking for very specific pieces to help you finish the game. Also, when you've got Jace Darkweaver in your deck, you want to hit as many of your fell spells as possible so that you're getting the redundancy on the effects, that you're getting those big swings. So Felgorger's getting 2 stars. It might be very strong in a deck that builds around it. So keep an eye on it. It might be a build around sort of card. In Arena, 1 star. Do not play this card. It's just a bad creature that sometimes gets you a spell. If you already have drafted 2 fell spells and you see this, it becomes playable. But that's it. That's the niche playable spot of a 1-star card. Next card is Persistent Peddler. 4-cost tradable 4/3. Death Rattle, summon a Persistent Peddler from your deck. This card's great. 4-cost 4/3, not good, but 4-cost 4/3 that dies and summons a 4/3 is great. So in Arena, you're probably not getting 2 of these, but you might. It's a below average creature that has some upside. The upside, the payoff is huge if you get multiples. In Arena, you might also be able to get 3 of these. It could happen. So if you see one early, I would say take it. So I'm going to give it a 2-star. It has some chance that it can get stronger. In Constructed, the applications are much stronger. The tradable effect, thinning your deck, the fact that you can cycle this away, draw a new card, which triggers your quest potentially, while also keeping the redundancy. You never have to deal with the downside of drawing 2 copies of this. If you draw 1, you can play 1 and trade away the other, and you never have to deal with not getting 2 of these creatures. That makes this card great. The sneaky upside is the quest enabling, right? It's just a very inexpensive way to cycle through your deck and get your quest rolling. Another reason why the quest line is better than people think, you can start running your Rustrot Vipers, your tradable cards that are niche playable or very strong when they're good and very bad when they're bad, and you just trade them away. Or you can just aggressively trade through your cards to get Kurtrus online very quickly. So swinging back to our first card, it has some potential like big upside swings because of cards like Persistent Peddler. I'm giving this card 3 stars. It's a card that maybe just is an auto include into almost every Demon Hunter deck. It's making me almost want to give it 4 stars. Can this card be a 4-star card? I think it's not aggressively costed enough to be 4 stars. I can't just say that it is going in every single Demon Hunter deck, but it's close. I think this allows you to play some more aggro options because it's a 4/3 that's very hard for them to kill. They kill it, you get another one. In control decks, in questline decks, you're drawing extra cards. In mid-range decks, it's 2 cards to help fight for the mid game. It might just be a 4-star card, but we're going to give it 3. But put Persistent Peddler in all your decks. Try it out, play with it, see if it hits those breakpoints. I think if there's a meta that has a lot of 3/2s for 2, or a lot of 3/5s or 4/5s, then this card would get a little bit worse, which is why I can't just say it's just definitely auto include. But it's just a very strong card. It's essentially 8/6 for 4, maybe for 5 mana, with a lot of big upsides. So play Persistent Peddler. This card's great. Lion's Frenzy. Next card is the weapon for Demon Hunter in this set. We've got a 3-cost, 0 attack, 2 durability weapon. Has the attack equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. This card is sneaky good for the control deck. It needs to be the win condition in the control deck, and I'll tell you that this is how you use it. Lion's Frenzy comes out. Next turn, let's say actually not next turn. This card could sit in your hand. You can play it on the turn before you play Jace Darkweaver, we'll say. And you're going to, on that turn, cycle through all your tradable cards. You're going to trade away everything. Play a Chaos Strike or a Fury that's giving you +3 attack. And in one turn, you could easily hit for, let's say, 8, 9, 10 damage with Lion's Frenzy. Stack onto that the fact that you might have Soul Fragments that are churning through your deck that you're drawing a lot of. You might actually draw extra cards that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. And Lion's Frenzy can suddenly become a very large burst of damage. Then, that's the first durability. You use it on the turn that you just happen to draw lots of cards. It doesn't make it very flexible at all. You probably don't just play it. Maybe you do. You just have it sit out there and you wait for the turn that you want to use it. But then you have the payoff turn. And the payoff turn is where Lion's Frenzy goes nuts. And this is why I'm sure this card costs 3 and not less, because everyone's looking at it again and saying this card's garbage. This card might be sneaky powerful, and there might be a completely busted finish to a deck. You have Lion's Frenzy. On one turn, you just instantly draw 4 cards, maybe 5 cards, you hit for 5. When you play Jace Darkweaver, and you get your Chaos Strikes, and you get your draw a card effects that are just going to churn through, you might end up with a big payoff turn where your hero just gains 6 power from spells. Then you might draw another 3 cards from the cards that you played off of Jace. Plus you drew the card for your turn. Plus the cards that you drew might have drawn Soul Fragments, which could effectively double, or we'll say on average give you an extra 30% or 25% of the power of your draw. So if you're Jace, if you build a deck, and it'll be very interesting to see if we can fit all these cards into the same deck, you could potentially play Jace Darkweaver, draw 8 cards, including your Soul Fragments, gaining back up all your life, making this into an 8 power card, plus the value of the Chaos Strikes and the Furies, which might be 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 damage, and suddenly you just hit them for 15. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal, everybody. It also, in the existing deck with Il'gynoth, if you play Il'gynoth, you can actually not try to one-shot your opponent, but Il'gynoth with Jace gives you extra reach with all the lifesteal spells that you're getting off of Jace, to give you like a second shot at your all-in combo, and Lion's Frenzy gives you like a third shot. So this card might be sneaky good. It's definitely something you have to build around. You'd have to build an entire deck with this plan of Soul Fragments. I think is absolutely pivotal to the strength of Lion's Frenzy. It opens you up to a lot of RNG, but the payoff might just be big enough where Lion's Frenzy might just win you games. So it's getting 2 stars, but when it's good, it's going to be great. The problem is when it's bad, it's going to be bad. You definitely have to build around it. 2 stars. In Arena, do not play this card. This is a 1-attack weapon. Very hard to get anything better. 1 star in Arena. Actually, I would probably give it 0 stars if I could. Just never pick this card. Fel Barrage, 2-cost Fel spell, again. Deal 2 damage to the lowest health enemy twice. Now, presumably, this is deal 2 damage, and then look for enemies, and then deal 2 damage. Cards like this tend to give a moment for effects to happen, so you should be able to kill an Ectoplasm, have its Death Rattle go off, it gives you a 2/2, and then it kills that as well. So this card's just great. Fel Barrage is going to show up in every control deck, every Jace deck. It can also, importantly, hit your opponent for 4 if the board is clear. It'll be interesting if Jace does first in, last out sort of thing on the graveyard spells, or if it's random and what comes of it from there as far as dealing an extra 4 or 8 damage to your opponent with this, or more if you have spell damage. This can hit face. It can kill 2 creatures on the board. It can kill a 4/4. On turn 2, it's definitely clearing the board. This card is just absolutely absolutely super strong. So Fell Barrage is getting a 3-star. You're going to put in every control deck, every mid-range deck. There's a chance that it goes in your aggro decks too, to just say like, hey, if you're control, this deals 4 to the face. If you're mid-range, maybe it kills one of your small creatures or a wand maker and hits face. And if you're aggro, boom boom, it's going to kill 2 of your guys on the board. This card's great. It's tiptoeing on 4-star. I think the Demon Hunter class got a lot of interesting cards. It'll be really fascinating to see where the direction of that class goes. I know we're going to get some new decks in United and Stormwind. And last but not least, my favorite, the Mighty Morphin Power Murloc. Metamorphin Power Murloc. This card is a 1-cost 1/2 with Taunt. With Battle Cry, if you've cast a Fell spell this turn, gain +2/+2. All of the cards that we've seen are good. You're happy to play these Fell cards in your deck. I-Beam is also Fell and cheap. You've got access to a lot of good ways to just play a 1-cost 3/4 Taunt. If there's a downside, it's that most of these spells are best when your opponent is playing small creatures. So in a metagame where your opponent is playing small creatures, a 1-cost 3/4 is absolutely phenomenal. If it's a more control or mid-range with big creatures type metagame, it's going to be harder to find the targets for your cheap removal spells, which makes it therefore harder to get your Metamorphin in play big. In those matchups, you might just jam this card on turn 1 and just like chip in with a couple extra damage. Probably not happening very often, but it is flexible enough to do that. It is a Murloc. There's a couple of Murlocs in the set, so we wonder if there will be some support for that. But this card's great in the right environment. And if you're looking for a Demon Hunter control deck, one of the things that those decks lack is the ability to fight early game. And a 1-cost 3/4 Taunt means that, at the very least, on turn 4, you're casting a gain 3 life spell plus a 3/4 Taunt. In a recap, Demon Hunter is in a great place. There is a lot of super powerful effects, especially to support a Fell spell Soul Fragment based control deck. I think the quest is much better than people are giving it credit for. There are some cards that you just ubiquitously great in Demon Hunter, and there is a payoff spell. Demon Hunter, boom. United and Stormwind gave it a lot of tools, 2 thumbs up.